Counting down the best James Bond pre-title sequences, in at a lowly number 22 is a film that everybody seems to rate very highly, but the pre-title sequence isn't one of our favourites. One of the more famous pre-title sequences by Bond fans, one of the more fated, and certainly trying new things, very different to what's before. Very short, that's one of the more unpredictable things. Is it about 4 minutes? And black and white, and then a black and white grainy flashback. That's underrated.
This wasn't to my taste. The idea of two fellas roughing each other up in a toilet and trying to choke each other in a urinal is not my idea of James Bond. If it is your idea of James Bond, I'm thrilled for you. You've had 20 lovely years, haven't you? For me, this is not my bag. It just isn't my bag. I didn't think that the script made any sense whatsoever. The whole I know where you keep your gun, all too clever, all too self-referential.
Shame. We barely got to know each other. I know where you keep your gun. Suppose that's something. True.
Too try hard. The black and white stuff, also very too try hard. I did not care at all immediately for this take of James Bond. I just thought he was very cold, very arrogant, unfeeling, and he wasn't any kind of James Bond that I felt I could root for right from his opening scenes here. It's just my take. I'm wrong.
I agree with Rob's comments about it's not as clever, it's not as witty as it thinks it is, and that kind of is a bit grating. The pre-title sequence, the black and white doesn't work. It's too on the nose. It looks the Dutch angles and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like you're not sorry, Martin Campbell, you're not Brian De Palma. It is a bit forced. It just, for me, it just doesn't work in the sense of I know what they're trying to achieve, and I do think the fight in the toilet is a great introduction to this Bond because it's like this, nasty, dirty, snot-filled scrap in a dirty toilet. It seems like actually this is a perfect introduction to this raw kind of Bond. And that's what I kind of thought they were trying to do this. Like I say, this rugby player, massive guy. But the problem is that it's intercut with a scene where it's supposed to be there for dramatic effect, isn't it? That it's like this calm scene cuts to this brutal fight, and it cuts, and so you've got this contrast. But the scene when he meets whatever his name is, I find to be really quite boring and cliched. It looks like it's a film noir. It looks really like it looks like an advert. To be honest with you, it looks like I always feel like it's going to cut to selling, like. Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's what it has, that vibe. The stuff that's shot in the toilet where it's grainy, I think looks miles better. It has that. You can tell that's Martin Campbell really getting into the action and that really that kind of brutal kind of fight sort of stuff. So part of me thinks that actually this is the perfect kind of opening scene for the Daniel Craig era and what their intention was to make of this character. But it just isn't as good as it thinks it is. And I think that is down to the writing and the setup. I think for me, doing the sort of Bond Begins, showing him as, the rough diamond, you have to see him as the classy guy eventually. That's the art. But the problem is they never did that with Daniel Craig. They never got to that point where he's not an absolute meathead who does, beats people up and he is like a bulldozer. And I am quite conflicted because there's some stuff of Casino Royale that I really like, and it tends to be the stuff that is actually from the novel. I know a lot of people don't like the poker stuff, but I find that whole setup, between the poker games, the fight, and all that sort of stuff, I really like that. I struggle with the beginning because it is so bombastic, it is so in your face, I find it quite exhausting. The whole opening. First, but I think the pre-title sequence at the time I thought it was refreshing, not having the gun barrel and then having the gun barrel because it's like, oh, that's the gun, that's the genesis of the gun barrel. But obviously, I was in my 20s and I was an idiot. And so upon reflection now, it just has a sort of cheapness, it feels naive, it doesn't quite live. I understand the intention. It never reaches where it should be. And that's where I struggle with it. So I'm kind of like say I'm sort of in between. I agree with what Rob has to say in some on some points. But I understand the intention, and therefore I know why people do actually love that opening
Yeah.
sequence in the film.
The black and white means you just can't see enough. You just can't see
Mm.
what's going on. So there's some weird shot where he looks at something on the wall, and then that's meant to signify that Bond's there. You can't see what it is. Is it his
Is it
gun?
a safe that's open?
Oh, you can't see, so I don't know. To be honest, I think it's a decent scene. I do think it's very scripted. You know,
Mm.
not for a minute do we, like say, Chris, it feels noir, it feels scripted. Not in a De Palma way where it does feel scripted, but it's of the style. This does feel very forced, as you said.
Mhm.
And the line, the considerably, it took me ages to understand that. I accept it works. I accept it works.
Yes. Considerably.
I can't think of anything more childish in a computer game that in order to qualify as a double O agent, you have to
Yeah.
kill two people.
Mhm.
But
Level up.
Your file shows no kills, and it takes 2.
And
what?
also, it's like it is slightly
Funny.
cartoonish when he shoots him. And he like the way he
Yeah,
flies
yeah.
back off that chair.
Yeah.
It's just like
The second is
it feels like a scene that was written in retroactively for that line considerably. They thought that's a funny line. That's a good line. How do we get to that point? And that's why it all feels a little bit forced and a bit awkward. And even you can see that Daniel Craig is just like it's not that clever. And I would, I feel that the stuff, that the fight itself is impressive in a filmmaking kind of like may not be Bond. It's more like True Lies, isn't it? That fight,
Yeah.
but it needs to be cut in contrast with something that's just a better scene. I feel for it to work. I feel like it just doesn't work because that scene is let down. It's just not. It doesn't feel dramatic. There's no like investment in it. It's just like some
No.
bloke turns up at what looks like to be a bank. It's like I don't know
Yeah.
who he is, and then
Yes.
you know what I mean?
Is it meant to be floor 7? It's like it goes up to 6 and then you don't see it. I don't know. I'm just
More than anything, it's the dialogue for me and the characterization through the dialogue that I really just don't care for.
Mm.
Craig is good at he nails whoever this Bond is, this character is. I
Mm.
don't think it's a case of if Roger Moore was trying this script, it would just feel really weird. It wouldn't work at all.
What they've done is they've taken what is quite a slim novel and a
Yeah,
slim premise.
very
You
short.
know, it's almost it has been turned into a stage play, it has been turned into a
Yeah.
TV movie. You know, like it does, and what the stuff that they've added to it is a little bit forced, and therefore
An old
it's
traditional Bond.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's a traditional kind of like plot, Bond plot, but then you've got this like say this rugby player just running through walls and screaming, shouting and hitting people, and it just doesn't fit. It doesn't gel. And if what I would have done is shown that rough, meathead at the beginning, and then by the time he gets to the casino, he's calmed down. He's much more mature.
Yeah.
He's much more classy. He's actually earned. He's become the Bond that you expect, and that is the journey. But they never quite do that. We never escape, and particularly in Quantum of Solace, where he's just on this like nutter's revenge. He's just like stabbing, letting people bleed to death.
Yeah. I actually think this is the most impressive Bond Daniel Craig is as Bond, as in he's infiltrated this place. He's sussed out that his superior is in on it. That's really good spy work.
Yeah.
He executes him very cleanly. And we see him, he's handy in a fight. I thought the whole point was that he's becoming Bond. Well, he's done it. He's done
Yeah.
it. He doesn't need to
But,
do
but
it.
this Bond always has to seems to have to announce his successes. He talks about it all the time. Like, hey, I've managed to get in here. Like, I didn't know your password was da da da. And stuff like this, like here, like, oh, we don't mind you selling, secrets on the side. It's just, all this kind of stuff.
Em really doesn't mind you earning a little money on the side, Dryden. She'd just prefer it if it wasn't selling secrets.
Made you feel it, did he?
Did he? Did he?
Made you feel it, did he?
He's quite a good character. He's quite unlikable in a good way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you don't mind that he's killed. But he's very cocky, isn't he? There were too cocky.
He is.
I can jolly well understand why this would appeal to people. Even the pre-title sequence is of that ilk where this is, like you say, Chris, in the marketing, this is a new Bond who we're actually going to show him really duff a guy up in the toilet. It's not glamorous.